But sometimes in marriage, he says, sometimes you're not in love. And he said, my wife and I, we give ourselves that allowance to say there's sometimes that we're not in love, but there's also sometimes that we are. And he started talking about the commitment of what marriage is, because he's saying there's some moments that not everything is just peachy and everything's just going right. There's some moments where it doesn't always feel right and feel good, right? There's some moments like that we're not in love, but there's sometimes that we are. And there's sometimes when things are good, and there's sometimes when things are not so good. There's sometimes when there's rough patches, and there's sometimes when there's great things, right? And so he's just talking through this to say that, this is what happens in a marriage commitment. And these things, when the sometimes things are bad, aren't just the sometimes when, like these men were doing to their wives. Just because breakfast was burnt and I had a bad day, just because they had a bad day doesn't mean that we're done with this. He's talking about the commitment here. And as Jesus always does, he wants to bring things back to the heart of the matter. And he wants to bring things back to what he really wants to talk about. And that's what is healthy marriage. And so let's continue on. See, marriage is like a mirror. It simply reflects the things that we put into it. Marriage is like a mirror. It reflects the things that we put into it, the things that are in front of it. And so the things that you as an individual are willing to put in the marriage are the things that are able to reflect back to you. It becomes a 100% thing. It's never a 50-50 split. Marriage is never reliant on what your spouse is doing good or what your spouse is doing bad. You're never keeping track or keeping points of this is you got 90 points today and you got 10 points yesterday, and I have a feeling you're going to only get 20 points tomorrow, right? It doesn't work that way. We don't keep track or scales like that, because this is at its foundation is a commitment that has been made between two people. We'll talk more about that in a second. So marriage is like a mirror, and it reflects the things that we put into it. And so what it does is it puts the responsibility back on us as an individual to say, am I doing all that I can for this marriage? Am I doing all that I can for this marriage? It puts it back onto the individual.